Level 1, the skim. You're a customs officer at a mid-sized international airport. Not a major hub, not JFK or LAX, a regional port of entry that processes maybe 800 passengers a day. You've been doing this job for 6 years. You know which flights carry risk. You know which passengers look nervous for real reasons versus the ones who are just afraid of authority in general. Most people are afraid of you by default. That uniform does something to people. You've watched it thousands of times. The flinch when you make eye contact, the over-explanation, the hands that can't stop moving. You use all of this. You've been using it for 3 months now, since the first time you waved someone through who shouldn't have been waved through. That someone gave you $800 in an envelope. Cash, unmarked. Slipped through a declaration form like it was nothing. You took it home and didn't sleep for 2 nights. Then the money was still there on the third morning. Nothing had happened. Nobody came. You weren't caught. And that was the problem. The operation is simple at first. Someone contacts a contact who contacts you. The chain is long enough that you can tell yourself you don't know the details. A passenger comes through your lane. They've been flagged in advance. You clear the flag. You wave them through. No secondary screening. No bag check. No questions. They walk out into arrivals and disappear. You collect your fee within 48 hours. 3,000 to 5,000 per passenger, depending on what they're carrying. You don't ask what they're carrying. That's the rule you set for yourself. You don't want to know. Not knowing keeps you functional. It keeps your hand steady when you stamp the passport. You're not thinking about what's in the bag. You're thinking about the $4,200 sitting in a bank account your ex-wife doesn't know exists. Your cut is small. You understand that. You're one node in a network you can't see the edges of. Someone above you is making 10 times what you make. Someone above them is making 100 times that. You're at the bottom of a very profitable pyramid, doing the riskiest part of the work for the smallest share. You know this and you accept it. The money feels enormous because your regular salary is $54,000 a year before taxes. In your first 4 months of cooperation, you clear an extra $31,000. That's more than half your annual salary. You pay off your car, you fix the leak in your apartment ceiling that your landlord ignored for 2 years. You buy decent food. Small changes, nothing visible, nothing that would make someone ask questions. Level 2, the expansion. They ask you to bring in someone else, another officer in your terminal, someone you trust. You already know who they want. There's a guy on the afternoon shift, 7 years on the job, going through a divorce, 2 kids, behind on everything. You've watched him eat vending machine sandwiches for lunch 3 days in a row. He's already compromised in every way except the formal one. You have one conversation with him, not explicit, nothing that could be recorded and used cleanly, just an implication, a reference to supplemental income, an understanding reached in under 4 minutes. He's in by the end of the week. Now, you're not just a participant, you're a recruiter. That's different. That shifts your position in the hierarchy. Your fee goes up, $6,000 per passenger, sometimes more. The operation processes more volume because you now control 2 lanes. The network expands around you without your direct knowledge. You don't know how many ports they're running. You don't want to know. But you know you're not special. You know there are versions of you in a dozen other airports doing the same thing. The Internal Compliance Office runs a routine audit. This happens twice a year. You know the schedule. You've known it for years. Your clearance rates are checked against secondary screening outcomes. They're looking for statistical anomalies. Officers who clear too many flagged passengers, whose lanes produce disproportionately few seizures. The numbers can betray you. You know this. So you've been careful. You flag real passengers, you pull random bags, you run legitimate secondary screenings on people who are genuinely innocent and waste their afternoons in a holding room. You're manufacturing cover. The audit comes back clean. You're statistically average. Average is the goal. Average is invisible. You don't want to be the best customs officer in the terminal. You want to be the most forgettable one. Level 3, the upgrade. They want you to move product, not passengers carrying product, actual shipments, cargo. Your airport processes commercial freight, roughly 40,000 packages per day through the bonded warehouse. Most of it moves on algorithm, automated flagging, spot checks, random pulls. But human officers sign off on releases. You have that authority. A container gets flagged. You review the manifest. You clear it. Simple. The shipments are larger than anything you've dealt with before. The first one is a commercial pallet of ceramic tiles from a factory in Colombia. You know what else is in the shipment. You sign the release form. The pallet moves into a delivery truck and disappears. Your cut is $22,000. Single transaction, 90 seconds of your time. You sit in your car in the parking garage after your shift and stare at the steering wheel for a long time. You've graduated from facilitating individual smuggling to enabling wholesale distribution. The scale is different. The risk is different. everything is different. You tell yourself it doesn't change anything. It changes everything. The money is becoming a problem. Not because there's too little of it, because there's too much. $43,000 sitting in a savings account you opened under your middle name at a credit union 3 towns away. Another $18,000 in cash in a shoebox. You can't spend it openly. You can't deposit it in quantities that trigger reporting. You're committing a second crime now to manage the first one. You drive to 3 different banks and make cash deposits of exactly $9,500 each, just under the $10,000 threshold. You do this on different days, different branches. You feel clever doing it. You're not clever. This pattern has a name: structuring. It's a federal offense on its own. You've handed investigators a separate charge without realizing it because you watched one video on YouTube about cash limits and thought you understood the system. Well, level 4, the suspicion. Your supervisor calls you in for a meeting. Nothing formal, no union rep, no paperwork. Just a conversation over bad coffee in a room that smells like carpet adhesive. He tells you that cargo release rates in your zone are running faster than the sector average. Not alarmingly. Not enough to flag a formal review, but enough that he noticed. He's not accusing you. He doesn't have anything to accuse you with. He's just letting you know he's paying attention. You respond exactly right. You express concern. You offer to run a self-audit of your recent releases. You suggest the variance is probably weather-related. Fewer staff on certain shifts. He nods. He seems satisfied. You walk back to your station and your heart is running at 140 beats per minute. That conversation cost you nothing. It will cost you everything eventually. He's going to keep watching now. That's what supervisors do after they flag something. They wait. Your handler goes quiet for 11 days. No contact, no instructions, no fee drops. 11 days of silence while you show up to work and stamp passports and pretend. On day 12, a message comes through the channel they use. 3 words: be at work. That's all, no explanation. The next morning, 2 passengers come through your lane separately, 20 minutes apart. You clear both without incident. One of them makes brief eye contact and looks away. That's it. No envelope, no confirmation, nothing. You don't know what they were carrying. You don't know if the operation is restructuring or if something went wrong or if you're being tested. The uncertainty is its own kind of torture. You've handed control of your situation to people who don't care whether you survive this. Level 5, the investigation. The Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General opens a case. You don't know this yet. You find out later, much later, in ways you never anticipated, but it starts on a Tuesday in February. An informant inside the network gave them a port of entry, a time window, and a cargo type. Not your name. Not yet. Just a thread. They pull the thread. They pull it methodically. The way federal investigators always do. Patient, deliberate, not urgent. They have time. They know threads lead somewhere. They cross-reference cargo release records against staffing schedules. They identify which officers signed off on which shipments during the flagged window. That list has 7 names on it. Yours is one of them. They begin financial analysis. 7 officers, 7 sets of financials, tax records, bank statements, credit reports, property records. They're looking for income that doesn't match salary. They're looking for debt that disappeared too fast. They're looking for the shoebox you've been sleeping next to. You're still working, still clearing passengers, still signing cargo releases. You have no idea the list exists. You have no idea you're number 3 on it in terms of priority. They're building the case before they ever approach you. That's the methodology. Never tip the subject. Let them keep operating. Let them keep generating evidence. Every fraudulent release you sign after they open the case becomes an additional count. You don't know you're being watched. You think the meeting with your supervisor was the worst of it. It wasn't even the beginning. Your colleague on the afternoon shift gets a visit. 2 investigators come to his apartment on a Wednesday evening. They're polite. They're professional. They have printed bank statements spread across his kitchen table before he even understands what's happening. They tell him they know about the money. They tell him they know about the arrangement. They tell him he has one opportunity to cooperate before the window closes. He calls you from a number you don't recognize. You don't pick up. He doesn't leave a message. The next morning, he's not at work. He calls in sick. He'll never work another shift. He's agreed to cooperate fully. He's given them your name, not because he's a bad person, because he was terrified and had 2 kids and no leverage. You would have done the same thing. You didn't have better character. You just didn't get the visit first. Level 6, the approach. They come to you at work. That's the part that surprises people. They don't come at night. They don't kick your door in at dawn. They walk into your terminal at 10:40 in the morning on a Thursday. 2 men in suits. You see them talking to your supervisor. You see him look across the floor at you. You see him look away. That's enough. You know exactly what this is. Your body knows before your mind processes it. Your hands go cold. Your vision sharpens the way it does before something terrible happens. They walk toward you. One of them shows credentials: DHS Inspector General. The other is a Treasury agent, financial crimes. Two agencies. That means the cargo operation and the money. They've been building this for months. You just don't know how long. They take you to a small room in the administrative wing, the same carpet adhesive smell. They lay out a summary of the investigation: 17 cargo releases over 8 months, $214,000 in unexplained income across 4 accounts, structured deposits totaling $80,000 at 6 financial institutions, 1 cooperating witness, surveillance photographs from 3 separate locations, your handler on a call with you that was intercepted through a warrant you didn't know existed. You've been recorded, not once, 14 times. You listen to all of this without speaking. Your attorney isn't present. You should have stopped talking the second they identified themselves. You didn't. You asked 2 questions that implicated you further before you caught yourself. That's what people do. They panic and they talk. The investigators know this. They count on it. Level 7, the end. The charges come back 9 days later: customs fraud, conspiracy to import controlled substances, money laundering, structuring, bribery of a public official. Each charge carries years. Stacked, they carry decades. The federal prosecutor is not interested in making your life easier. You are a law enforcement officer. You were trusted with authority. The betrayal of that authority is what they emphasize. At sentencing, the judge uses the word breach 4 times. You count them: breach of public trust, breach of oath, breach of duty. The word accumulates weight each time. Your attorney negotiated a plea: 12 years, federal facility, no parole in the federal system. 12 years means 12 years. You'll be 54 when you're released. If your health holds, if nothing happens inside, neither of those is guaranteed. The facility is in another state. 8 hours by transport van, shackled. The uniform they give you is the same color as every federal institution. Orange isn't even the right word for it. It's more of a faded amber, like something that was once brighter and got washed too many times. Your cell is 7 by 9, a narrow window, too high to see out of without standing on the bunk. Your cellmate has been inside for 11 years and communicates in single syllables. The intake officer processes your paperwork without looking at you. Name, number, classification, risk level, housing assignment. You're not a customs officer anymore. You haven't been one since the first envelope. You just didn't know it yet. Your badge, your credentials, your airport ID are in a property box somewhere in a federal evidence facility. Cataloged, tagged, filed under your case number. You had access to 40,000 packages a day. You had authority that people respected. You had a salary and a uniform and a pension waiting at the end of a legitimate career. You traded all of it for a shoebox with $18,000 in it and a credit union account you opened under a middle name. The math never made sense. It never does. Not for any of them.